going on, guys? Certified meteorologist Jonathan Kagas with you. Our next big weather system is taking shape as we speak, so we are going to break it down. Also, toward the end of this video, we're going to have a recap on hurricane season, party time. Today is the last day of hurricane season, November 30th, 2023. We're going to say goodbye, thankfully, to the active season that was. We'll get into that towards the end of the video. If you want to stay updated on the weather, hit that subscribe button for me. If you happen to find interest or happen to find this video informative, please hit that thumbs up button. It really does help us out a lot. Post in the comments where you're tuning in from. We're going to cover a lot of the country today. All right, so a couple of different features that we see here on the water vapor imagery. We see this little swirl out here. Here's our upper low towards the Four Corners region of the United States. And then we have our surface low developing down here by Houston. And it's by Houston that we are going to have our severe weather threat today. It's a little regional threat, but certainly the opportunity for severe weather is going to be there. We'll talk about some of the dynamics after we break down the severe weather threat. And again, we do have a heightened risk here, an enhanced risk, that orange little blob, if you will, hanging around the Houston area and the northern suburbs around Bryan to the west of us in Lake Charles, Port Lavaca. We're under that slight risk, that level 2 out of 5 on the severe weather scale. But certainly the highest opportunity for severe weather is going to be with this developing Gulf blob that I will show you on the future radar coming up in just 1 second. Nonetheless, we had this big upper low kind of ejecting here, and that is going to help some things out going forward over the next couple of hours. Again, this is going to be through Thursday afternoon and early evening. We can clearly see here this little red area and all these different colors on your screen. This is the upper level height pattern with vorticity mixed in. Vorticity is just the spin here. That's the scientific term here that we're going to be using, the meteorological term for the amount of spin in the atmosphere here. So the darker the red, the more intense the spin. And then these lines here, the height lines, represent, you can kind of see the dips here in the jet stream. So here is our upper low right in there. Our low would sit right about there. You see the green, the wind barbs that I have kind of overlaid on. So there's a lot going on in this map, but it kind of tells a story here of what's going to be rolling through. So that's going to be the upper level low here that's going to kind of inject some of the energy and the reason for that developing surface low down there. That's going to give us that little bit of extra oomph, some wind shear into the atmosphere to help that severe weather threat get going for us in the southeast corner of Texas, at least north, central, and southeast, towards the Houston area anyway, and then the west part of Louisiana where we saw that kind of developing area. So I want to show you the high-resolution future radar here. So I'm going to turn some things around, and I want to kind of break this down for you on a high-resolution scale, how this severe weather threat could play out today, and then how this storm system materializes, could bring some snow to parts of Michigan a little bit later on Thursday and especially on into Friday. It's going to be conditional. I'll show you what I mean in just 1 second. But really here, as we look toward the next couple of hours, this is going to be 1 o'clock for us on our Thursday, and we already see these little red shapes. Again, I'm not looking at an outbreak, if you will. It's going to be on a small scale. Nonetheless, that threat is going to be there. And again, we have a pretty heightened risk at level 3 out of 5. But there we go. And where you see the darker red and purple, that's where we're going to have the opportunity again for some really nasty thunderstorms. Maybe the potential for a couple of tornadoes in there as well. So there's 7 o'clock for us on Thursday. Really transitioning to a heavy rain, maybe straight line damaging wind threat for us right along the North Gulf Coast, still of Texas, east of Galveston, and then right along the Louisiana coastline. Then this kind of blob of moisture kind of transitions closer towards New Orleans, and then eventually kind of works its way down into the North Gulf Coast and eventually into the Florida Panhandle. More on that in just 1 second. We're going to start things off on Friday now at 11 o'clock in the morning, and some really, really heavy rain coming to Detroit. And this is where we're going to be looking for a changeover. I don't really think we're going to see much in the way of that changeover make its way into Detroit, but you see it there. There's 11 o'clock, a little bullseye there of some heavy snow, and then that mix line. And then it does get really, really close. Now, on the back end of this, as some colder air gets pulled in, we might see some flakes flying in Detroit, especially, again, on the northern side of Detroit. But there's 6, 7 o'clock on Friday evening. Most of that snow now on the northern side of the Great Lakes. That cold air just really doesn't catch up in time. We were talking about this in yesterday's video, that this was mainly going to be a rain threat. Although, as we go forward into this winter, the storms are going to be prolific. The question is, will the cold air be there? And that really holds true for my friends in the Great Lakes, and especially in the Northeast. All right, so we're going to take a trip back south again, and we're really going to look at the rainfall potential. And again, the severe weather potential is the first thing that we are concerned with in and around the Houston area, southeast Texas, east of San Antonio, around Lake Charles, and then up through Dallas. But it's also going to be the heavy rain threat through Saturday. That cold front that's going to be, that blob, if you will, that rolls up into Michigan area, the Great Lakes region. The cold front's going to be kind of trailing that, and then it's going to get hung up over the North Gulf Coast. And we're going to have kind of rounds of moisture feed through that. So here we go. This is going to be the expected rainfall through 11 o'clock on Saturday. And this is where we could have a flood threat, really through the North Gulf Coast from Lake Charles to New Orleans and then into parts of the Big Bend of Florida. Look at that. Anywhere from 2, 4, 5, 6 inches of rain could fall in these areas. That's what we're going to be watching for a flood threat, really starting on Friday and then continuing through Saturday and then as well into Sunday as we get these rounds and rounds of heavy rain. I kind of want to show you a more localized view for that. So same kind of deal. This is it goes out a little bit longer. The high resolution only goes out 48 hours, but this is kind of what I want to show you from a North Gulf Coast standpoint. So this is 8 o'clock, and let me bring out my front. So our front's kind of draped here, and then we have some of that Gulf moisture riding up along that front. Let me get my eraser back out here and take away the cold front so you can see what's going on. But there are those kind of training thunderstorms. The storms kind of build off of each other. The front is that trigger mechanism, that wind out of the southwest and the upper levels, going to allow for that repeated rainfall, really from New Orleans to Pensacola to Apalachicola to Tallahassee. There's 4 o'clock on our Saturday, and more of that is going to continue again to allow for the potential for a ton of rain to come with us into the North Gulf Coast. So that's the weather that's going to be happening on the 30th through the first day of December. Look at this. It's all over. Hurricane season comes to an end officially on November 30th. Of course, we can get storms to form postseason and early season in January, and there is a higher opportunity for that to happen because of how warm the Atlantic is. It would really likely not impact land. Those would be way out in the middle of the Atlantic. But we're going to look back on the season that was, and my head is blocking Harold, so I'm going to take this full. That, of course, affected us in South Texas. But here is the map of all of the storms, 19 of the 20. Not shown here is that kind of weird subtropical system that was found in January on reanalysis off the coast of North Carolina, South Carolina, way back in January again. So that's not pictured here, but all in all, including that unnamed storm back in January, we had 20 storms, 7 hurricanes, 3 of those hurricanes becoming major. And of course, the strongest of the bunch was Hurricane Lee reaching Cat 5. It's in here somewhere, and that's where right down in here, well to the northeast of the Lesser Antilles. That's where we had Lee become Cat 5. The most impactful hurricane storm of the season, no doubt, was Idalia, which made landfall, of course, in a really weird spot in the Big Bend-ish, Panhandle-ish region of Florida. Came ashore as a Category 3. A lot of devastation there. Billions of dollars of damage as a result of that storm. With all of that said, especially with how active, 4th most active season on record and the most active El Nino season, this was the main question that we had, was the extremely warm water temperatures of the Atlantic going to counteract El Nino? And it did. Hurricane Center, NOAA, did a really, really good job at forecasting the above normal season. So hats off to them. Again, another successful season in terms of forecasting the number of storms. We're kind of right smack dab in the middle there with the hurricane forecast and major hurricane forecast. So a very, very nice job as usual. Again, those are the smartest minds in the tropical world, no doubt. Here's a list again, exhausting all names except for Vince and Whitney. Again, there still may be a shot in December for a sloppy-looking subtropical storm that could get those names. If it does carry into 2024, we would be using the 2024 list if we got any of those weird, ugly-looking, again, subtropical or tropical storms in the North Atlantic. Something we're watching for. But again, for all intents and purposes, this season is over, and I just want to thank everybody that came to this channel for their tropical weather. I know we have a lot of new friends in the Caribbean. We have a lot of new friends across the Northeast into the Gulf Coast, into Mexico, Central America as well. Just want to thank you again for tuning in and having the conversation with us and getting that vital information from us in this channel. We really appreciate it, and again, we will be here for you guys next year. And again, don't don't go away, because we're going to be here, of course, as we get through the bigger systems this winter and talk about all that kind of stuff, which could be rocking, of course, in the Pacific and California, in the South because of El Nino, and then again, hopefully for a blockbuster winter in parts of the Northeast. This is the accumulated cyclone energy. Again, when you kind of take all the storm's energy, it's a metric there that's used to kind of measure the season, and above average, again, in terms of this metric, 145.6 was that number. The average is just over 121, so an above average normal in terms of the energy produced. I know a lot of people will be like, well, they name everything. And we name more. Well, the Hurricane Center names more storms for sure. We have much better data out there. We have much better satellite data to kind of get in there and kind of look to see, is this a meteorologically and scientifically tropical system? But this just shows again that we did have intense storms this year. Idalia, Lee, there was another one that's name is escaping me right now. We had another major hurricane. Let me go back to that list. There were a lot of storms. Franklin, of course, was a Cat 4. That one headed up towards the Canadian Maritime. So a lot of nasty storms. Thankfully, though, with the exception of my friends in the Big Bend and Panhandle, it wasn't that impactful. Again, with the exception, I know it was a horrible, horrible storm for you guys, and we were still thinking about you. And again, as we get ready to wrap up this video and wrap up hurricane season, like I mentioned before, we're still going to be talking about all the weather across the Caribbean, the United States, anything that comes our way. We've got you covered. And again, for those that are impacted the most by tropical systems, we will be here for the 2024 hurricane season way, way off into the future. We don't even want to think about that as we just wrap this one up. But again, for the bottom of my heart, thank you guys for tuning into this channel for all your tropical needs. Thank you for the conversation. That's my favorite part about this. Hit that subscribe button again if you want to stay updated in the off season and as winter really ramps up in the United States, in North America, and Canada. We'd love to have you along for the ride. Post in the comments where you're tuning in from. Hit that thumbs up button for me, and we will catch you next time.